1978. I'm in Utah doing set deck for the NBC show The Adventures of Grizzly Adams. It's an easy gig, mostly outdoors, view-standing sets. And to be honest, I was fine with it. I had just started my 6th decade working in film, and I was starting to feel like I wasn't having fun anymore. And for the first time, I was seriously thinking about retiring. Anyway, I had become friends with Dan Haggerty, the show's star, an LA boy who had reinvented himself as a mountain man. And one night after wrapping, he comes up to me and says, "Hey Marty, me and the crew are going up to a friend's place for a bear shimmy party. You want to come with us?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, but what's a bear shimmy party?" He just broke into this big grin and said, "You'll see." So we drive out to this private ranch about 50 miles south of the location. Once we get there, we all file into this giant tent. And in this tent was a circle of wooden benches, and in the center was this pit with 8 full-size grizzly bears, each in their separate cage. I look at Dan and I said, "Okay, what's going on here?" And he just smiled and said, "You'll see." Just then, a man comes out with one of those big pump-style bug sprayers, and he starts spraying the bears, and they start snorting and snarling. And I'm thinking to myself, this can't be a bear fight. Dan's an animal trainer himself. He wouldn't sanction this. But there's Dan sitting next to me, looking all the world like he's about to see the Beatles. Finally, the bear cages are remotely opened, and the bears burst out and lunge at each other, and my heart leaps in terror. But then I look closer and notice that there's no blood and viscera. And I realize after a minute that I'm not watching a bear fight, but a bear orgy. They were going at each other like their genitalia produced honey. It got to the point that you couldn't tell where one bear began and where another one ended. And while it wasn't the least bit arousing, it was incredibly mesmerizing to watch, like a giant furry lava lamp. Finally, all at once, every bear let out a roar and then collapsed into a heap. And then from that heap came a noise like the sound of an engine of a 58 Studebaker idling down. They had fallen asleep. And while their bodies were still, the fur began to sway in the cool night breeze coming through the flaps of the tent. You could almost say that it was shimmying. Our hosts then served us a fine barbecue, and over pork ribs and slaw, Dan explained to me that the spray they used on the bears was a mixture of pheromones called Alaskan fly, that they sprayed on them to encourage them to breed. And as he's talking, I suddenly feel this burst of excitement creep into my bones. I realized that even after 60 years, I had not yet lost the capacity to be surprised. That this job was still the grand adventure that I had started all the way back in 1918 when I showed up on Mac Sennett's doorstep, broken hungry. That realization kept me going for another 30 years.